Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Abrasive Conversations. And this week we are continuing with our heritage series, and this is our second installment. Today with me, I have Dieuwke-Jean Linee. She is an artist, and her work you will find at the Koena Art Institute. Dieuwke, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dieuwke, this month is Heritage Month. And you're one of those prolific artists whose work is available at the Koena Art Institute. I know that your work focuses mostly on historically strong women. Why?
Well, my journey feels like a lifetime. Feels like a lifetime already, but it's actually been 2 years, believe it or not. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we all remember COVID. COVID happened and the lockdown and everything. So initially, I was in the tourism industry. I'm still in the tourism industry. I studied travel and tourism management, and I worked at a wine estate. And of course, when the lockdown came in 2020 and the alcohol ban and everything was just came to a complete standstill, I unfortunately had to stay at home also with the liquor ban. We couldn't sell anything. I was a wine sales assistant. I couldn't do anything, so I had to be at home. And I always, did art, pursued art. I've been drawing and painting since I was 6 years old. It was something that's natural to me as breathing, I think. I can't really imagine myself or my life without art or without drawing. It is my escape from, the harsh realities of life. It's my way of processing because I'm introverted also. So again, when I was at home and going through all of this, the idea of a pandemic and the idea of people dying every day and, thinking what's going to happen tomorrow? Will the lockdown ever end? I started drawing and I started painting. So even while I was studying tourism, I always came home from college and I will always kind of breathe and kind of wind down through my art and drawing and painting. And it all started with historical buildings because I'm from Paarl, I'm from the winelands, and here you see all the history around you. If you walk down the main road, you literally walk past the history. And I was always fascinated by the stories behind, like who were the people who lived in those buildings, who were they, what did they do back then. I have a very, very overactive imagination. I love history, and for me, as a young woman, especially in history, you don't really see women well represented, especially in South African history. I mean, if you look at our history books, it's always men. You always see these paintings of these, old men looking very stiff, with these glasses and those big mustaches and beards. You don't always see the woman, and especially our women of color even less, even though we were always there. It's just that those stories and those photos, those images are just in archives, in boxes, hidden away. And then 2 years ago, I came across Sara Baartman's story. While I was at home looking at my mom's bookcase, and I saw the book of Sara Baartman, I thought, I've always heard of her, but I never really knew what her story was all about until I read it, and it just blew me away. It struck a chord with me, and just to think that all of these women, besides her, there are so many others that their stories are there, but we don't know about it. Why have I never heard of her story? Why don't I know about this? And it's for that. I think it was through that quest, through that urge of wanting to learn more and know more about my history, my people, our country, our history, what happened before, that is where I think where the spark came, and just thought, what if I could tell their stories, but through my art? At first I had no idea how to do it, but I think pretty much the rest is history.
Yeah, I must say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sitting in a living room and I'm surrounded by strong women of color, and I feel at home. I really do feel at home because what you're giving is a dignified face to sometimes people who were faceless, like you've mentioned in our history. And one of those people who you draw attention to is Krotoa. And you have completed a work titled Krotoa Re-imagined. Please tell us about the inspiration behind this work.
So after I was introduced to Sara Baartman, again, there were illustrations of her. Obviously, the cartoons and the satirical images that were created of her, the posters, etc., that kind of gave an idea of who not Sara Baartman was, but Sara Baartman as the Hottentot Venus, as she was known, or the Black Venus, etc. I discovered that, or at least I thought to myself, I look at these images, but I thought, what did she really look like? We are looking at a representation, or at least an outsider's perspective. We saw a European or a colonial perspective. What about what she looked like to her people, to her mother, to her sister? What did she look like to you and me, those who probably, if they had the opportunity to know her? And through that, it was first Sara, then I met Dr. Diana Ferris. It was funny enough, I read about Dr. Diana for the first time in that book, in the same book, and I read about the poem that she wrote. And I was just so inspired and touched by the fact that she used her artistic skill or her power of poetry to be able to incite change. I mean, to shift the perspective. If you look at I've Come to Take You Home, it is just again a paradigm shift, not from the perspective of, how you say, European or the colonial perspective. It was a home, that sense of homecoming. It was almost an indigenous perspective, someone who is from the soil, someone who is calling out for this woman for this girl to come back, And I just thought to myself, I would like to do that. I would love to do that through my art as well. And not long after that, I met Dr. Diana Ferris, and then through her, I met Professor Sylvia Vollenhoven. So it was on a painting that I created of Sara. I also reimagined Sara. She was my first reimagined. So I thought, okay, let me create an image that how I think she might have looked like. Because the paintings were a bit not very proportionate, because it was done by European artists. It was a struggle for them to paint, round noses or flat noses. You will always see they try to render it, but it would be like this small pointy noses or these, full lips, and it's just so disproportionate that I felt, let me try and do research and to see how I can create an image, how I think would represent who Sara Baartman was. And in fact, she was a very young woman, a very young girl. She was 18 when she was taken to London. However, on that image, Professor Sylvia Vollenhoven commented, and she only commented with one word, and she just said Krotoa. That was all she commented. Nothing else. And I thought to myself, okay, I immediately knew that I should create a reimagined interpretation of Krotoa. And we were all familiar with the black and white image or the sepia-toned image of Krotoa that is on the internet, on official websites. And I knew, well, I didn't know. I mean, back then I had no idea on what kind of a journey I would go with Krotoa. I had no idea. It's actually, looking back now, it's insane, really. But just to think that it started with that one, just her name, Krotoa, and little I know the journey that I'll be taking on through going through the research, discovering her story and finding out who she was, and also discovering through this that the image that we were familiar with is in fact a photograph, through the research, through finding high-res photos or images of this image. My mother, Dieuwke-Jean Linee, who's a local historian and a family researcher, she's the one that basically does most of the research, or through the archives, going to the archives and finding this information on my behalf, discovered that this photo was taken by a photographer in the 1870s, and the title is A Kurana Girl. And I mean, it just blew me away. I remember the shock when she showed this to me and said, but, Dieuwke, and it was actually through the research we did for the drum poets, where we're looking for images of the poets. It was the same photographer, it was in his catalogue, that she found this image, the full image of what we thought and believed was Krotoa Eva van Meerhof. And that was, I think, the spark where I realized she doesn't have a face or a visual. There isn't a visual representation of her. Over the centuries, or in the last century, however, academics used illustrations of, I don't want to say random women, but women who they thought could represent Krotoa, or at least her people, or the clan or the tribe that she belonged to. If she, Krotoa was of the Koena tribe, they would try to find images of those who were linked to the tribe and say, okay, but this is what she could have looked like, and they will use a different woman. For example, the illustrations done by Samuel Daniel is ones that are used commonly to represent Krotoa. And I just felt, but why do we have to use an image of clearly someone else with their own story, their own lives? Why can't I use my imagination and create an image based on what I feel or how her story impacted me, and through the descriptions published by the men who met her back in 1650, I think it was 1654, where Joe Nieuwhof was the first traveller who wrote about Krotoa in his journal, obviously Jan van Riebeeck as well. There are other names that also pop up who came into contact with Krotoa herself and then wrote down the descriptions or their first impressions that they had of her. And for me, already, it's just bits and pieces. Yes, it's vague, but at least it will help me to paint a different picture, not the one that we were made to believe was Krotoa. So, yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what is happening here is a conversation that is happening within a community. Some of these are your Indigenous Khoikhoi and San communities, but also a conversation within the university. And that's about one image. The image that we normally know of Krotoa, as Dieuwke rightfully mentioned, if you Google it, it will come up a young woman with a doek on her head. And that was a photograph that was taken by the same photographer that took photos of the Kweiten, Kweite, ken, and all of those other poets. So it's the same photographer. So someone, use that as kind of the visual representation of how Krotoa could look like. But what Dieuwke did, she said, that is someone else. We need to give a dignity to that person. Dieuwke's mother, Hebring, is currently on a mission to find this person and to finally return, and the family, to finally return the memory back to that particular community, to that family. So what Dieuwke did, she went ahead and did a reimagination, artistic expression of Krotoa. And I'm so glad you did it, because I think that is, and I've mentioned it to you before, it's the most dignifying image of Krotoa that I've seen. And the reason why I'm saying it's dignifying is because it's in the eyes. And I know, as you were sitting here and you were talking to me, I realized a woman drew the painting.
Yes.
A woman drew the painting. So of course you will return dignity to the image and make the image more powerful. So since then, the painting, and there's a couple of versions of the Reimagined series. I'll call it a series of artistic expression. And now it's on the cover of a book that was celebrating the 350 years of a life, and it happened in July this year. And with the remembrance of Krotoa this year, it took place at the Groote Kerk. And guess what? Dieuwke was commissioned to do the painting. So please tell us more about that.
So I have to continue the story where we went, where I said Professor Sylvia Vollenhoven commented. So she invited me to watch her play Krotoa Eva van der Kaap, that she wrote and she created. It was performed at the the Artscape Theatre in 2022. It was there. It was it was a limited time performance, and she invited me and my mom to come and watch. And that's also where I was first introduced properly to Krotoa's story. The first time I've ever heard of Krotoa was actually through the release of the movie, the motion picture in 2017, which did not make sense to me at all. I'm going to be completely honest. When I watched it for the first time, it made no sense to me. I actually thought it was a fictional character was made up. That was what I thought, until I heard afterwards, no, but it is true. She really existed. She's a real historical figure. She was taken by Jan van Riebeeck. And I thought, but why was I never taught about this in school? I was only taught about Jan van Riebeeck and Harry the Strandloper, which we now know as Ochumau or Ochumautu. But I was never heard of a girl named Eva or Krotoa. So it was through that play that I was first introduced, and there I did the research and did the digging. And then last year, Professor Sylvia Vollenhoven invited me to be part of the official Krotoa building, or the renaming of the R.W. Wilcox building at Stellenbosch University. And they did a collaboration with, I think it is the Australian government. And part of the celebration, or part of the ceremony, which was called a Now for Now, was an exhibition. It was a performance also. I think it was a dance performance. There was poetry. Dr. Diana Ferris is also part of this. And, of course, a visual exhibition. And she asked me to showcase two of my pieces, one of them being the Reimagined of Krotoa, and also another painting I did called Framed, which was my take on the photograph of this Korana girl taken by Samuel Baylis Barna, that's the photographer's name, where I basically wanted to show that this girl was framed at the end of the day, to be known as Ava or as Krotoa. So I basically, in this painting, you'll see a woman holding a golden frame in front of this little girl with a label on it that says Ava, but in quotation marks, just to show that, you know, or at least my way of showing that, you know, this girl was framed to be Krotoa, to be the face, to be the representation of her. And it's not her at all. It was someone else who did this, so hence framed. And that was part of the exhibition. And it was at this ceremony where Dominee Rian de Villiers met me from the Groote Kerk. So he met me there for the first time. He saw my art and he was very interested in inviting me to a project. But at the time, I had no idea what they actually planned. They mentioned that they were going to do something because this year is the 350th anniversary of her passing. And back then, I had no idea. But then in March this year, he contacted me. We connected again. He contacted me and asked me, Dieuwke, we would like you to create an image for the church that we can keep there, because they want to commemorate the fact that she was, in fact, a member of the congregation. The Groote Kerk being the oldest, not the oldest church, but they have the oldest congregation Christian congregation in the country. And Krotoa was baptized in 1664 as the first indigenous Southern African that was converted to Christianity. And she's also buried there on the grounds of the church, at least reburied, because she was originally buried at the old fort, or on the area where the first fort was. So at the castle, it would be before they laid down the foundations of the castle where it is currently, they had to dig up all the remains, because there used to be a graveyard, there used to be a small church there, or a chapel at least. It wasn't a formal church. They had to dig up all the remains and basically rebury it in the area which is where Groote Kerk is located today. So, yeah, bit of a mouthful, but they wanted to basically commemorate that history and that part. And also because it was their way of, dignifying the memory, the fact that their forefathers, the congregation, the Dutch Reformed Church, were the ones who were responsible for her banishment. The fact that it was the first settlers that came in, they were the ones who started the first congregation under the leadership of Jan van Riebeeck. So it's their way of, creating that reconciliation and also dignifying and celebrating and restoring her memory and, how can I say, to remind the congregation and also us of her place there, the fact that that's her final resting place. So they wanted a visual that could mark that could be used as not only not as a landmark, but also as a visual, a visual tool to tell her story, who she was, and also her link to the church. So that's why they came to me. So it was a big project. I remember when he spoke to me on the phone and he said all of this, I thought to myself, you want one painting? Is this for one painting? They said yes, one image. So yeah, I thought to myself, at first I thought it was impossible, but then I also knew deep down, this is a huge honor and this is a challenge that I would gladly take on. And I said yes to the invitation.
Ladies and gentlemen, and that yes led to a beautiful painting. So I think what the audience would like to know, question as they listen to your story, would they have access to that specific painting in the church?
Yes, so the image, the original painting, is inside the church. It's going to be part of their collection of the Groote Kerk. And there's also an image of it that is blown up on a huge outdoor canvas, which is mounted on the oldest church tower or the oldest bell tower in the country. So the church structure itself is not the first or the oldest, but the bell tower next to it is original. It was built in 1704, and they had to demolish the main part of the church because of dilapidation, but then they rebuilt it next to the tower. So that tower is still there since 1704. And if you walk past the slave lodge at the back, I think it's about a social library, I think, they're in that plain. At the back side of the church, you can go and you can see the image that is mounted there on the bell tower. It is open for the public. You can have a look there. And also you're more than welcome to go in the church. It's free access to go on a guided tour also, and you will be able to view the original painting inside the church.
And then the rest of the other paintings that is part of this larger series, you can get some of them where? At
the Koena Art Institute. So Re-imagined, the first painting I did, Krotoa Re-imagined, is at the Koena Art Institute, as well as my other artworks that are there also. So you're more than welcome to visit the Koena Art Institute, which is at the castle of Good Hope.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to say, you need to get to Cape Town, you need to get to the castle of Good Hope, and then you follow this the trail of breadcrumbs that we're leaving on this podcast for you. But this is not the only woman that Dieuwke is celebrating. One of the other women that she celebrated is one of the Ham poets. And her name is Kweiten taďken. And you did a poem rendition while you're doing it. What inspired that specific artistic expression? Because if you put the two of them together.
Yes, so like I said, it was basically through Kweiten that we discovered the image. So for me, I call her Rachel Key. Even though it was a name given to her, I guess you could, I won't say a Christian name, but that was her Dutch name, Rachel, or English, I think, because it was Wilhelm Bleek and Lucy Lloyd, who was English, and her brother-in-law, Wilhelm Bleek, that did the interviews with the Kam people in the 1800s. So part of their I guess you could say their linguistic research was to get interviewees, am I right? Is that right? Yeah. But yeah, interviewees who they can speak to and ask for stories and ask for ideas, not ideas, but more about daily lifestyles. It was for their linguistic study, because they wanted to basically document and create a dictionary, so to speak. And one of them was Kweiten taďken. She was the sister of Dieuwke-Jean. She wasn't here in Cape Town for very long. She was only here for, I think, 6 months. She didn't like it in Cape Town. The Lucy Lloyd found it very difficult to work with her, because she was a very feisty woman. And I think if you look at her photograph, if you look at her eyes, I remember when I first opened the book, I was first introduced to that story also in 2022 in the start, when I paged through the book and going through the poetry that was translated into English, and I saw the photographs. I turned the page and I saw that photo of Rachel, and I thought to myself, who is this woman? She is absolutely gorgeous. Just her eyes alone got me. I thought to myself, I need to know who she is. I have to know who she is. And it's really like on the journey of me finding out who she was, it's almost like it's almost like I know her. You have this feeling of you know her. Like there's that connection that I knew I had to put down on paper. And so I think she's the only person that I've drawn and painted the most, funny enough. I've already done, I think, 4 pieces on her. So she holds she has a very, very special place in my heart for her, just because she is just, I feel the epitome of just Kwe and Sun beauty, really. I mean, I guess you could say in classical art or in academic art, you have the Mona Lisa. I think, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I feel Kweiten should be that feminine representation of just beauty, raw beauty, inner beauty, really. Because and that's what inspired the poem, because when I did my last piece, my last painting, which was a commission of her and her children, it was a painting I did, I was just so taken by her, again, her eyes. I feel like her eyes have got so much, she has seen so much. And I just thought to myself, I mean, this girl, from the Katkop Mountains, I think today it's Brandfort, I think, near Calvinia. And Brandvlei, yes, 100% correct. Brandvlei, I always get confused with the two. But I just immediately envisioned her just traveling all the way from the Northern Cape with her children to come and do an interview with a group of people who wrote down her stories. They got the accolades, they got their honorary doctorates for her words, her stories. I never knew of her. We know of Lucy Lloyd and Wilhelm Bleer, but we didn't know about Kweiten, about Rachel. And I just felt, no. We need to fix that. We need to know of her. We need to see her. You need to know of her. Because, I mean, she just seems like the type of woman, because there's also, there's, I think, 3 photographs of her, believe it or not. One was taken by another photographer, not Samuel Baird as well. I don't know who the other person was. But it just comes to show how even photographers wanted to take her image, because she was just such a beautiful, impactful woman. Just looking at her, she just has an aura on her that you just want to capture and you just want to celebrate. That's why I did it in the form of a praise poem, because I felt, no, the world needs to know of her. You need to know about her. Even if you can't click her name is Rachel. You can call her Rachel also. So that was my experience with that. And her image, or one of my pieces, is an oil pastel drawing that I did, is at the Koena Art Institute, along with her brother Dieuwke-Jean I did a series on the Kam poets. Their portraits are also at the Koena Art Institute that you can view.
Yeah, and you can buy it. The prices is there. So don't be so. Go and support artists. We must not just look. We must also support. Before I go into the style, because you have a particular style, there's another woman that we have to. And we have talked about it in this podcast for some time. But you also did a painting you mentioned before, Whitewash, of Sara Baartman. That casting was a very horrible process. Tell us more. Why specific whitewash, and why you positioned that work like that?
So, with the book that I read, I was introduced to a story in full graphic detail. Her story is absolutely horrifying, actually, which is understandable why they won't teach this to children at the high schools. I understand wholeheartedly. It is not for everyone. If you go into the full detail, I was already shocked and horrified by the whole journey that she had to go through, the humiliation and the unknown, her facing the unknown, not knowing what is happening. You know, you have these men telling you what to do, you should do this, do that. But I think the one part that was the kind of the, how do you say, the last straw that broke the camel's back for me was when I read that there was a cast made of her. So Georges Cuvier was the professor who studied her, interviewed her. He was a zoologist. Strange enough, a zoologist. His field of study was animals. And he, or at least the academics at the time, in the early 1800s, were very fascinated by the evolution of man. Where do we come from? Where did we, how did we evolve? How did we came to be? Is there a link between humans and animals? And he obviously, or he thought that he found that link in Sara Baartman. Again, that is a whole topic of its own. But for him to, question her, probe her, not just mentally by asking her all these personal questions, where do you come from? Were you married? Did you have children? What was your childhood like? Everything. After her death and her passing in Paris, he got a hold of her body mere hours after her death, and then started to, do an intense dissection of her body. But before that, prior to that, he created a cast, a full body plaster cast. So that basically means they would use plaster of Paris. I assume it's plaster of Paris back then, where you would cover the entire body and create a cast. You will put the plaster all over the body, wait for it to harden, and then remove it. So then that will be your mold. Then later on, you will fill that also maybe, I'm not 100% sure what materials they used back then, but nowadays you would either use silicone or you will use resin in the mold and to create a almost like a statue. But in Cuvier's instance, it was a full body plaster cast, basically a replica or a clone of Sara Baartman's body, which was then painted afterwards, made to look and resemble Sara, to even the curls on her head, to be put on display next to her skeleton in the museum, at the Musée de l'Homme in Paris. And it was on exhibition until the 1970s. And she passed away in 1815. No, I stand corrected. It's between 1815 and 1820. But for more than a century, she was still being displayed. And I just felt with that cast, that for me as an artist, that is the most humiliating thing, the most degrading, the most, how can I say, dehumanizing thing you can do to anyone or anything. To create a copy, a life-size copy. You dissected her, but here we have a copy of her. Perfect. And again, it's a copy of her corpse. She was dead when they created the cast. The cast wasn't created while she was alive. They did it during when Cuvier got hold of her body. That was when it was made. So again, that suffering, that pain, whatever, you can actually see in the cast, her face is swollen. We don't know what she what she had to endure. It's almost like you see set in stone or set in plaster the last moments of her life. And for me, I felt I wanted to paint that, I wanted to show that, almost as if, what if she was alive? What if her spirit looked into Cuvier's eyes while he made that cast, or his assistant, whoever made the cast, and be like, what are you doing? Are you even aware? Do you even feel anything while you're doing this? So that was my inspiration behind Whitewashed. Just that sense of, we are familiar with Sara Baartman as this freak show, as this character, this Hottentot Venus. But we don't know Sara Baartman as Sara, who she was. That she was this, used to be a daughter or a sister. She was a mother, because she had a child before she was taken, a young mother. And I just wanted to show that just for my way of restoring that humanity back into this horrifying experience, this horrifying ordeal, trying to bring back who the person was behind that cast. And that cast, it is still believed to be there at the Musée de l'Homme in storage. We are unsure whether it was returned with her remains in 2002. We don't know. But as far from what I heard or what I researched and read, it is either still in storage at the museum, or it returned, but we don't know where it is. We don't know the whereabouts. But the cast is still in existence.
Before the podcast started, you talked about your journey in terms of painting, especially in artistic, on this journey of artistic expression, and you choose realism. And I'm glad you choose realism, and that you went against the grain when you were at art school, because what you're doing now is you are returning dignity, but there's also a level of a political message, especially if you look at Whitewash, the fear in that. There's what art for me always is, the aesthetics and politics. The two of them goes hand in hand. Unfortunately, you cannot run away from it. So let's talk about your style. Even though the art school didn't agree with what you wanted, that's such things like you cannot box art. You cannot box the artist.
It's true.
And yet they want to box you.
Yes.
So let's talk about your style. Why realism? Or why did you go down this particular route?
I think just for the mere fact that I'm a perfectionist. I am a perfectionist. I am detail orientated. When I plan things, I need to plan it. What are we going to do? Are we going to do it like this? At what time? This time? Are we going to do it then? I will always ask if my friends or my parents have plans. I'll always be like, but when are we going to go? What time? When? So I feel that is also reflects a lot in my art, because before I even start to put down my sketch, I will already start to think, and I already start to plan out what will this look like? What do I want to tell? What is it? What will the audience see? What will they get from this? I already start to think of colors. Even before I touch a pencil or before I even pick up a page, whatever, I will basically build this world, so to speak, or set the stage. I will imagine it in my head before, and once I have a clear image, once I have an idea, okay, I think this is what it's going to look like, then I will start to create sketches. I will start to create multiple sketches, and then see, okay, well, this, because at the end of the day, it has to be visually pleasing also, aesthetically pleasing. Yes, you have to get your message across, but it has to make sense. So that's where already, again, with the abstract, that's where I fell out of the bus, because abstract to me does not make sense. I know there are people that love it, and I understand that wholeheartedly. But then again, art is objective and subjective. Not everyone will like the same things. So one person might love abstract, but they won't like realism. And that's one of the reasons why my art teachers felt that my art wasn't strong enough in their opinion. They just felt that, I wanted to copy the Rembrandt, or I wanted to copy Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci. They're old, they're history, they're historic. We don't do that anymore. That's history, it's old, it's ancient for a reason. And I'm like, well, okay, if that's your opinion, fair enough. But still, we shouldn't put artists in boxes. That's why we've got genres. I mean, if we have to ask Michael Jackson to sing opera, obviously you're not going to get the result. You're not going to get a hit song like, for example, Thriller. You have to respect the artist in the field that they are good at. And, for me, realism is my way of showcasing the reality of history. I mean, telling or interpreting my understanding of what history looked like to me. And again, it's expressive realism. So expressive realism is just how the audience will see the history or the story or the subject from my point of view, the artist's point of view. So if you don't agree with it, it's fine. You don't have to. But again, like you said, it sparks a lot of conversation. My art tends to spark a lot of conversation, because a lot of people say, "But no, I don't agree. That's not what she looked like. That's not what happened. That's not what she should look like, or she looked like this or that." It's fine. It's not meant to be accurate. My art it can't be accurate because I wasn't there. I wasn't there in 1652 when the Van Riebeecks came. I don't know what he looked like, or what Krotoa looked like. It is just a visual representation. It is a visual guide to tell a story. It's a tool to tell a story. Just as how someone will use an actor to portray a character. You might not be happy with the actress. You might not be happy with why do you choose that actress? But there's a technical reason why a director or a casting director will choose said actress from an audition. Same with art, I will use certain colors, I will use certain symbols or certain themes in my art in order to tell a story, in order to show the emotion of the particular story or the moment or whatever it is that I'm portraying in the piece. So it is realism, but again, it is realism in the sense that it can be almost like, I almost want to say, not fantasy, but it's almost like dreamlike state. It's almost like me taking you back. But you're still here in the present. I will always put you back in the present. I will always use, for example, synthetic lighting. I don't know, if you take the time to notice, if you take the time to look at my paintings, I will use synthetic lighting, believe it or not. If you look at, for example, Silenced, the portrait of Jan van Riebeeck and Krotoa that I did, where I reimagined Van Riebeeck, or at least the relationship or the connection between the two, you'll see that there's a spotlight from the one side and there's a spotlight from the one. Historically, realistically, it's not real. They didn't have electrical lighting, they had lanterns, but it's just my way of spotlighting, putting a modern light on historic events and historical people. I'm basically trying to bring the history back to the present.
But you see, I consider myself as an artist too. especially when I get into documentary filmmaking. I like to express myself. I don't want to be prescriptive. If you tell me, look, this is never going to be on TV, I don't care. Like when art becomes prescriptive, then it's not art anymore. Then you're copying someone else's ideas into something that you can sell. But then you get works that is commissioned, where someone is paying you for their idea or specific idea. I gladly follow your blueprint and do that, but I cannot really consider that as my true artistic expression. But if you say, tell me, look, I want something, you are free range to the artistic creation, then it's literally my piece of art. So all of those people who doubted or wanted to be prescriptive in your early years, I think they must look at their careers right now and see if they are happy in the field that they choose. Because what I'm seeing and experience from you is happiness. You have this free, you broke away from what the supposed industry standard supposed to be of the time. So now you can enjoy yourself as you're supposed to do what art. So thank you for that. Thank you for being brave enough to walk out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is behind the story scene. So I'm just giving her flowers while she's sitting here.
Hopefully pretty, yes.
Thank you for walking out and say, I'm going to do it my way. And your way is the best way for you and for the people who is attracted to your art. So thank you very much for you doing this. So there's also a group of people who gave her another set of flowers. And that was the Cape Winelands district municipality, especially the Mayoral Special Award, Phenomenal Woman of 2024. Do you hear that? Those people who rejected the art, she got an award. What does this recognition mean to you?
It was really unexpected. I did not see it coming at all. But I am honored. I am really, really honored to it really gives me such happiness and a sense of, motivation to know that my work is being noticed and that people find, a sense of inspiration in my art. And for them, for the mayor, for Alderman Elna von Schlich to give me this award was just absolutely astounding, really. I mean, 2 years ago, I could not have imagined that, first of all, I would be creating the art that I do, or I will be on the journey that I am. Because, like I said, before COVID hit, I was studying or working in a field that was prescribed. The art teacher said to me, Dieuwke, I feel you should choose a subject that will benefit you in the long run. And ironically, even though I am in the field, art doesn't always give you a steady income. You have to have a day job at the end of the day. However, hopefully, I hope that in the future that will change, that I can pursue art full time as my day job. It was just astounding. It's unbelievable, surreal to think that here I will be sitting, talking about my love for art. And it is something that I never, or at least I thought I wasn't supposed to do. And it almost feels like I'm rebellious. It feels like I'm doing something that people told me, no, you're not supposed to do this, you're not good at this, but I'm going to do it anyway, and now I'm doing it. So it is absolutely, it's amazing. I am honored. And the fact that people notice this, the fact that, my community and the mayoral council, the mayor herself noticed it really means a lot to me. And I just hope and pray and that this will just be an inspiration to all the other artists and, how can I say, artists and creatives and dreamers out there, just to show them that, you know, yes, people will tell you, or people might think or prescribe that this is not the path for you. If you give it a try, if you maybe be a little bit rebellious. I mean, if I look at Krotoa, she was a rebel. She was a rebel. I mean, so much so that she was banished by a commander. That is next level. I mean, for me, again, for me, honoring other phenomenal women like that, that is what I am all about. Oh, there you go.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is... show it up so that we can see.
Nice.
You see, that's the award. So for those people who rejected the art or the teaching, you're supposed to be a better teacher, man. We are running quickly out of time, so we have about 3 minutes to 2 minutes left. Would you like to spotlight anyone whose work do you think need a level of recognition, or people say go that way?
So a week ago, I was at a screening at the Koena Art Institute of 2 short films. One of them being a short film directed and produced by Nomandla Vilakazi. So she's at UCT. She is a performance artist herself, also young, driven, and her take on Sara Baartman's story. Her short film is called An Ode to Sara, which is absolutely phenomenal. Really, I met her last week. She was there, and I just spoke with her, but we spoke on such a level that I felt, no, more people need to know about her as well. She just inspired me to keep on telling these stories, because Sara Baartman's story inspired her in a way that drove her to create that short film, which focuses on not just Sara's story, but the impact that it has on how women view their bodies and how society view her body. She uses her own body as an example, a prime example of how we still struggle for acceptance. We still struggle to accept ourselves in a society that has standards or beauty standards, certain beauty standards that dates back to the time of Sara Baartman and even before. So I feel you should have a look at her work.
So I'll gladly will. 30 seconds. Where can people find you?
You can find me on social media. I am on Instagram, on Facebook, so Dieuwke-Jean Linee Art. And then also I am at the Koena Art Institute. You can have a look at their website and also follow their socials if you want to have a look at my work. But if you want to contact me, you can also send me an email at lineefinearts@gmail.com. If you want commissions or you want to ask me anything, you can contact me there.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. This brings us to the end of another episode of Abrasive Conversations. Today we had Dieuwke, and it was a pleasure and a wonderful experience to have this conversation with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.